Oh.
That were in Ukraine. Tons of research that show that the United States has been involved in stuff like that forever. There was actually bioweapons labs that were in Ukraine when the war broke out that the United States was somehow involved with. That were put that in there. But put that in there. What bioweapons labs was the United States involved with in Ukraine? Or how about this? Instead of being leading, were bioweapons labs discovered in Ukraine?
Baby girl.
Let's put that in first and see what it says. And then I'm going to ask it, were they funded by the United States? Can I see it? No bioweapons labs have been discovered in Ukraine, according to the United Nations, the U.S., Ukraine, and multiple independent experts. The allegations made by Russia and echoed by some Chinese officials involve claims that U.S.-funded laboratories involved in military biological activity were operating in Ukraine, but these claims have consistently been denied and refuted by international authorities. That doesn't mean anything. Independent investigations and statements by the UN disarmament chief confirmed there is no evidence of a biological weapons program in Ukraine. Yeah. Okay. Are there any stories online about bioweapons labs discovered in Ukraine?
Yeah, it would be this.
The allegations made by, but we don't know that that's true. So here's the thing. If the United States is running or funding bioweapons labs in Ukraine, and it doesn't become a national news item, you think they're going to come up and say, "You're right, we did it"? No, they're not. But if you're gonna fund bioweapons research in China and in a lot of other places,
but what
are there stories about the discovery? Let's see what it says here. Stories about the alleged discovery of bioweapons labs in Ukraine have circulated widely, primarily promoted by Russian officials and state media. But these claims have not been substantiated by independent sources or international organizations, nor could they be. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to get in there and fucking rat everybody out in the middle of a war? They're going to kill you. Like,
yeah, they wouldn't let that out.
Chinese foreign ministry and various conspiracy theorists have also amplified these stories, including claims of 26 biolabs and illegal research discovered by Russian forces.
I would hate to work at one of those places.
Right. Yeah. Okay, here's a problem right here. International news organizations and independent scientists, including the BBC and experts at King's College London, have reviewed the alleged evidence and found it lacking, noting that the pathogens and documents cited by Russia are consistent with public health research, not weapons development. Okay, public health research is one of the ways that they do weapons development. They do it under the guise of public health research. That's the whole.
Shay got hit by allegations. You're going to go over that. What is Shay?
The video thing. You see that thing where they put it on the video?
Oh, that was crazy. They didn't even ask you.
Bro, it was really scary for me.
You were just joking around because you were talking to a guy who's his friend. And this was quite a while ago, too, right? When was that video?
Yeah, I don't know. It could have been like a year and a half ago or something. I don't remember. But that was crazy.
But it was
like,
it was a joke,
yeah,
right?
She's like a friend. I don't know if she said a friend of mine got deported. I can't remember what she said. But she's like, "What? Do you have anything to say to him?" Right? And I was like, "Bye." You know?
Yeah.
I'm clowning around. I have no idea if it's real or not. I have no idea.
You have no idea. It's literally someone just handed you a phone. And then Homeland Security, was that what it was?
Yeah, just put it up online. And it was
it
after
Homeland
the Charlie
Security?
Kirk thing. Yeah. And so then I was like super scared, you remember?
Yeah.
Remember, I was texting I was just texting people to make sure everybody's okay. I didn't know if they were like just going to kill people that had been on TikTok or whatever. Like, I had no idea what they were going to do.
I just can't believe they did that with you, where they just put it in there as if like you were endorsing that.
Well, it just kind of, and it was just a scary time. That was the same time as
who
after the Charlie Kirk
greenlit
thing.
That? Who greenlit that?
Probably just some fucking trap beat,
but you know
con
what I'm
artist
saying?
or whatever.
Like if a company did that, you could sue them. You know what I'm saying? Like if it was privatized, like if ICE was a private company, and that was the people that the United States hired to get rid of illegal immigrants, and they used you would sue them. You could sue them.
Well, it was just scary.
But the government can just put that up there And then what did you do? You had to formally request them taking it down?
Yeah, I had to hire an attorney to get him help to take it down.
How long did it take to take it down?
I think like 48 hours. Somebody had like 30 million views over a couple platforms.
And how many people even know it was taken down until they just heard you say it?
Of course not.
I knew because you told me, but I couldn't believe it. When you first asked me what I should do about this, I was like, oh, that's probably nothing. And I was in the car and I didn't watch it. And then I got to the club. Then I talked to you from the club. And you're like, you didn't see it? I was like, no. And then I saw it. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck are they doing? Like, it's like, that's not how you envisioned the government. The government made a hype video?
Yeah, they were making like deportation hype videos with trap beats and shit. And I was like, what are we doing? That's what I'm saying. Everything is turned into like the WWE. It's none of it's real.
It's 100% that Mike Judge movie. It's Idiocracy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I feel like you're in the kitchen with somebody. This is your kitchen. You have a stove, you have an oven, you've got a refrigerator. I feel like you're in the kitchen with somebody, and then you come out. Hold on. The guy takes like a huge bowl of shit out of the fridge, and then you look at it and you go, "What are you doing?" And the guy's like, "I'm gonna try cooking something." It's like, "This is gonna take like shit. Why? Why would you do this?" And he's like, no, trust me. And then he takes the shit and he puts it in on a pan here, and he starts frying the shit up. And then he gets out. He goes to the cupboard and he's got some old shit. And then he takes the old shit out and he throws it in the oven. Wait, this is the stove. On the stove, and then shit in the oven. And you're like, what's the plan? What are you doing, buddy? And he's like, well, I'm going to bake some shit as well. It's like, this is going to taste horrible. And he's like, no, trust me. It's like, okay. And he fries it up. This comes out of the oven. The shit in the oven comes out. The shit on the stove is done. And he plates up the food. He gets out some shit and shitter shakers and starts shaking little shit flakes all over everything. And you're like, bruh, what are you doing? He's like, trust me. And then you sit down at the table. You come over here. You put your plates to eat. And he digs his spoon in. And he takes a big bite. And he's like, oh my God, this tastes like shit. And you're like, what the fuck? Are you fucking retarded? You were using shit the whole fucking time. How can you say...
A hype video?
Yeah, they were making like deportation hype videos with trap beats and shit. And I was like, what are we doing? That's what I'm saying. Everything is turned into like the WWE.
Wasn't Trump literally in the WWE or was it WCW? Like, yeah, what, have you not paid attention to anything happening literally the entire fucking time? You're in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Crazy.
Like deportation turned into like the WWE. That's what I'm saying. Everything is turned into like... the WWE.
Stop. Did you see the CDC's new page on vaccines and autism? Don't care. You guys all have autism.
The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions will please come to order. I thank our
media platform X. Decisions like this must be made in consultation with CDC experts, because otherwise we are left wondering who is advising the Secretary of Health. or if his own conspiracy theories are enough to dictate who can get a vaccine. Dr. Houry, did you ever brief Secretary Kennedy?
I never briefed him. I accompanied him on a tour of CDC after the shooting.
Did your center directors ever directly brief Secretary Kennedy?
They did not.
You were the chief medical officer at the CDC. Would you say that it's harmful to the public if the secretary is not informed by experts like yourself?
Very much so.
How would you characterize Secretary Kennedy's approach to working with scientific experts at the CDC?
You know, we would have loved to have had the conversations with him. I offered to 2 different HHS leaders that we would like to brief the secretary. He never received that, and many times I would send emails to our leadership.
Hold on.
Team to share with HHS when he did say things that weren't scientifically correct so that we could help support him. But our requests were not received to brief him.
So tomorrow, ACIP is set to discuss childhood vaccines. And based on what we've seen happening under Secretary Kennedy's leadership, we have to expect it will produce weaker recommendations for these vaccines. And at the same time, there is no Senate-confirmed CDC director in place. Secretary Kennedy has installed someone he is convinced will rubber stamp whatever decisions his anti-vaccine advisory members make as the acting director. In Wisconsin, there are currently 36 cases of measles, all in unvaccinated individuals, 22 of whom are children. I am thankful that we have not seen any deaths yet, as we have in Texas. Dr. Houry, you have seen firsthand in the ER what vaccine-preventable disease can do. What would an increase in vaccine-preventable diseases mean for children and families across the country?
It's going to be heartbreaking. Not only will it overwhelm our healthcare system, but children will have, some of them will be deaf. You know, we've seen congenital measles cases in the U.S., and I think what concerns me is these aren't harmless diseases. We just saw the case in California of a young child that died of encephalitis from years after measles. These diseases have long-term consequences, and we don't need, in the U.S., we have gone so far in reversing this. We don't want our children to die.
Speak for yourself.
We'll go next to Dr. Marshall, and then for the sake of the committee, after that, we'll take a 15-minute break to go vote, and then we will come back and continue. Dr. Marshall.
Dr. Menares, despite the president's executive order, did you encourage people to work remotely ever?
I did not encourage people to work remotely.
Okay.
Okay, if I could interview one of these CDC people, what would we ask them? What are good questions? Think hard.
Allegations that you took some of the political appointees and you basically took them out of your orbit, out of your office area. Did you reassign office location, desk location for the political appointees?
So I do want to go back to your first question. After the shooting, I allowed staff to work remotely.
Okay, you can give us the details of that later. The second question, did you push political appointees out of your main office area, reassign the political appointee seating?
I brought some political appointees in.
My question is, did you move some out?
So there's a limited number of offices in my.
Did you, I can say yes or no, did you move political appointees out of your main orbit?
And I brought other political appointees in.
Okay, you can give us the details of that later. Do you believe every child over the age of 6 months should have a COVID vaccine at least annually?
I believe that is a discussion that a parent needs to have with their pediatrician. And if it is right for that child, based on the risk, then that child should have the opportunity to get the vaccine.
If there's reports come out that show that indeed the COVID vaccination led to the death of children, would that influence your advice?
Certainly would want to know about that.
Okay, the CDC currently recommends between 70 and 80 shots over the child's lifetime. Do you fully support that recommendation that every child needs every vaccine as recommended by the CDC?
The data associated with those recommendations has been validated and vetted. That is the current schedule.
So you agree that you support every child needs every vaccine that's on the CDC recommendations, all 70 to 80 jabs?
The childhood vaccine schedule has been vetted and validated through science and evidence. The almost 20 different diseases that are mitigated through those vaccines are very important. I think that every parent should have the opportunity to talk to their pediatrician and make sure that they understand the benefits and the risks of those vaccines and what is in the best interest of their children.
Do you believe any or all of those should be mandated?
CDC does not mandate vaccines. What CDC does is provide the evidence associated with the recommendations so that a parent and a physician can make the best determination for them.
When you were considering this job as CDC director, was there ever any doubt in your mind that you could fulfill the mission to work with Secretary Kennedy?
There wasn't. I have worked for political appointees and politicians for almost 20 years. And my experience has been when it comes to critical and important issues like science and medicine, data has always been paramount. And it has always been the core driver to how we work together.
Would you agree with me, though, at this point in time, that you're not the right person for this job, that your belief system, thinking that every child needs every vaccine, which is what your CDC does, every child needs every vaccine, all 70 to 80 of them, is certainly a different mindset than Secretary Kennedy's. And that if the university president, I think a great sports analogy, I hate to do this, but the university president and the athletic director decide you're not the right coach for this team, then it's probably time to say goodbye and we need a new coach. Would you agree that certainly you're going in a different direction philosophically than Secretary Kennedy is?
So I will stand behind.
Childhood vaccines aren't mandated, but if you didn't do them, would that be child neglect? No. The CDC makes recommendations, but the CDC is not the body, I believe, that would do those types of mandates. My guess is that's coming from like the Department of Education or something else, or the state curriculum or something.
Behind scientific integrity with every.
Can you unban NVIDIA keywords, finance bros download? I'm not even trying to tag you with it. Nope, don't give a fuck, because too many. Every time something happens on NVIDIA, there's like 50 billion chat spams a day about, you use NVIDIA? I don't care. So now it's banned for a week.
Decision I ever make. If I am put in a position of having to say, I will cede scientific integrity to retain my job, then I am not the right person for the position. I believe that we must have science and evidence to support the best decisions for our children and others who would benefit from vaccines.
So I think here's the biggest difference in philosophy that I see, is that I think the CDC is the cause of vaccine hesitancy, that you are the problem. That because of COVID, and you're forcing these vaccines on people that weren't ever really proven or justified that the benefits didn't outweigh the risk, and you all sat there with your hands in your pockets and you let that happen. And then you let this hepatitis vaccine be at 1 day of age, be forced upon everybody. And all of a sudden, the moms and the grandmas never trust you because you're trying to force a vaccine that's not necessary at day one. If you're going into nursing school, medical school, absolutely, you should consider that hepatitis vaccine. But basically what the CDC does is act like a mandate. And you force doctors that don't agree with you to kick patients out of their clinics because they don't want their child to be exposed to a vaccine that was approved after just like 140 patients took it, being followed up for 5 days. It just makes no sense to me that every person needs every vaccine. But regardless, some of the vaccines have done incredible work. They are a miracle. They've done a great job. The basic vaccines that we got in the 60s and 70s, polio, MMR, DTaP, those seem to be great vaccines that have told the test of time. But your attitude here that every person needs every vaccine is completely contrary to Secretary Kennedy's philosophy and the mission of the president. Thank you.
So, as announced earlier, we will stand in recess subject to the calling of the chair. I expect it'll be about 15 minutes. We ask the members of the audience to stay in your seats so the witnesses can retreat to the holding room. We'll be back.
He was very upset. The entire meeting was very tense. He was very upset throughout the entirety of our discussion. Are critically important and they impact real lives. And so the more that we can do to ensure that we are achieving radical transparency, accountability, and evidence-based decision-making, I would highly encourage it.
Right. And FACA does have provisions, the Federal Advisory Committee Act, and so I do think this is the perfect opportunity for Congress to ensure that CDC is following those processes. Those processes are there for a reason, to ensure that there's transparency, gold standard science, and that the public has the opportunity to engage.
Right, transparency becomes one of the keys. We're talking about trust here.
Yes.
And without transparency, you're never going to have trust in
Correct.
the modern world. In terms of pandemic preparedness, and Dr. Houry, I'll talk to you, and I love seeing where you did your training in Denver, Colorado, Denver Health, which is my medical provider, just so we're completely clear.
I thought you meant Tulane, but that's okay.
Love both.
I want my 9 seconds back. Dr. Houry, given the layoffs, somewhere in the process of over 2,000 employees have been fired or attempted to be fired. In your testimony, you mentioned the CDC has seen a 60% decrease in flu samples and a 70% decrease in COVID samples. That's alarming. That's striking to me. What's the reduction? What's that attributed to?
So a lot of that is attributed to withdrawing from the World Health Organization. Many countries don't view us as the same level of partner. That's something that can be overcome, but it takes leadership to really proactively reestablish those partnerships so that we're not flying blind. We know what pathogens are out there.
Right. And I'll just leave a question. What keeps you up at night? What keeps you both up at night? Very concisely.
The next outbreak, and I don't believe that we'll be prepared.
I'm concerned about the future of CDC and public health in our country. Given what I have seen, if we continue down this path, we are not prepared, not just for pandemics, but for preventing chronic health disease, and we're going to see kids dying of vaccine-preventable diseases.
Thank you both very much. Appreciate it. Yield back to the chair.
Senator Murray. Moody, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
Moody.
Chairman. Thank you for being here. My mic's on. Maybe I wasn't speaking loud enough. I have to say, I'm a new senator here, so this is all very troubling to me. But I'm really shocked. Most people come and introduce their families. I'm really shocked that we have behind you anti-Trump lawyers that you've invited. Do you want to introduce your lawyers that you brought with you today?
Anti-Trump lawyers. Am I allowed to say kill?
I'm just noticing that they're aiding with your testimony. They keep handing you notes and whispering in your ears. So I figured you should probably, for the record, put their names in the record. My
lawyers have been publicly associated with me already.
So you're refusing to acknowledge the attorneys that are present in this hearing room helping you with your testimony?
The attorneys that I have been.
I mean, I've been in the legal world for a long time, and attorneys generally aren't shy about stating appearances and saying when they're here helping clients. So is there some reason you don't want to introduce the senators to the lawyers that are here and put their names on the record?
Yeah, I think.
I mean, they're passing you notes, so I think it's fair for the record to know who's passing you notes while you testify. And I really didn't mean that. I'm trying to be adversarial here. I just think for the record, it's probably good to know who's passing notes and whispering in your ear.
I think my counsel is happy to follow up with you. I was hoping that we would stay focused on the critical issues related to.
We're at a hearing because you called the chairman and talked about these issues, and the chairman has called a hearing, and now you're here testifying, and you have attorneys giving you notes and whispering in your ear, presumably about your testimony. So for the record, who is here with you, helping you with your testimony? I mean, look, I'm a judge, I'm a former federal prosecutor, I was attorney general, I was a lawyer. Like, this is not an abnormal thing.
Oh, crazy. I almost said earlier, so she's definitely not a lawyer, because she said, I've been part of the legal world. That made it sound like she was like a staffer or something. She has an extensive legal background, though. Jeez.
Yeah, my attorneys have been publicly associated with me.
What attorneys are here with you at this hearing, assisting with your testimony and whispering in your ear? Please state their names for the record.
My 2 attorneys that are in the room would be happy to follow up with you after the discussion.
So,
she was the AG in your state. Booty was? Oh, nice.
Mr.
Thanks.
Chairman, I would like the record to reflect that you have called a hearing of 2 people who have hired anti-Trump lawyers. When did you hire them?
I sought their counsel, I believe on the day, on or before the day I was fired.
And is now refusing, now that they're in the courtroom and helping with testimony and passing notes on what to say, refusing to give their names to those of us that may not know their names. I mean, is there a reason you don't want to give their names? Are you
No,
afraid that it's going to come unraveled, that you have this whole network of people that's trying to embarrass the president or go after the president, and now you are joining this group? And why don't you want to give their names?
Their names have been publicly associated with them. They issued public remarks early on. After
Let me ask your colleague. I've noticed they've also been giving you notes too and whispering to you. Will you state their names?
So their names are Abby Lowell and Mark Zaid.
That wasn't too hard. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I really was genuinely asking so that the record was clear. But now I'm wondering what else we're trying to hide. And I'll go back to you. Did you plan to coordinate? And I'll go back to the original witness. Did you plan to coordinate this public spectacle surrounding your firing?
No.
Public spectacle.
And have you coordinated with Dr. Houry? Am I pronouncing that correctly? And I apologize if I'm not. Did you coordinate with her or anyone else that you worked with surrounding your leaving?
I did not coordinate with anyone surrounding my leaving. I was terminated abruptly.
So you had no advance plan to write an op-ed, do a public hearing. I noticed that you immediately called our chairman.
I had committed during my confirmation process several elements, including integrity, transparency, working with Congress.
But you had no advance plan with any colleagues?
I had no advance plan with any colleagues.
Dr. Houry, if there wasn't an advance plan, did you tell a reporter we agreed to do this together?
Myself, Dr. Jornigan, and Dr. Daskalakis.
Agreed to do this all together?
Once Dr.
I shouldn't have watched this. It's a mistake. Fuck. Okay, I gotta calm down.
Agreed to do this together?
Myself, Dr. Jornigan.
I'm talking to this lady in about 20 minutes. I'm just saying if there are questions that I want to write down for this conversation. I think her and her colleagues resigned when it's not Maduro, how do you pronounce her name? Menorez was fired from the CDC. I think her and her colleagues stepped down as a result afterwards.
And then Dr. Daskalakis.
Agreed to do this all together?
Once Dr. Menorez was being terminated, the 3 of us knew that we could not remain given our ethical concerns and commitment to scientific integrity.
I just want to make a brief comment as my name was invoked. As the chairman of the committee with jurisdiction over the CDC, that favorably...
This wasn't on the schedule. Because sometimes when I put things on the schedule, they get more annoying. Because if I put it on the schedule, there's going to be 50 million people saying, who's that? Because I can't Google it. Or they're going to say, why are you talking to this person? Which is retarded. So, you know what? It's not on the schedule.
Reported Dr. Menorez as CDC director, it is entirely appropriate for someone with oversight concerns to contact my office, or me, or frankly, any of us. Upon receiving outreach from Dr. Menorez, I contacted both the Secretary and the White House to inquire what was happening and to express concerns about what was alleged. As soon as the director was fired, the HELP committee began reviewing the situation as it is our responsibility, and any and all communications with the witnesses was conducted by HELP staff in coordination with attorneys.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment on that, please?
Yes, sir.
Very briefly, I find it rather astounding that anyone is concerned that government heads of agencies talk to the elected officials of the United States of America. That is what they are supposed to do. Thank you.
This is now Senator Blunt Rochester's turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for reminding us of our oversight responsibilities. And I also want to thank the 2 witnesses for your strength, for your integrity, and for not staying silent. The fact that you were even finding out important information through tweets, it's not the way we operate. That's not the way we keep our country safe and our public's health, keep our public healthy. And so I want to first thank you both. I know you both mentioned as scientists, as doctors, and as parents. That's why you're here. That's why you care. And so last week, I led an in-depth discussion with experts on how Secretary Kennedy's vaccine policies are creating a lot of confusion in this country and harming families. And I heard from a pediatrician, a parent, a school nurse, and 2 former ACIP members who were fired by Secretary Kennedy. I'm extremely concerned that the Secretary has now stacked the committee with people committed to his agenda. As you said, the concern is the focus shouldn't be on ideology, but on evidence and on science. To put them there, Secretary Kennedy accused former members of being, quote, plagued with conflicts of interest and used that as a pretext. A question for both of you. Did you ever observe anything that cast doubt on the scientific abilities of those members?
I would actually just state, Dr. Menares and I had worked together when she was acting director. We posted conflicts of interest for the past 2 decades of the ACIP members to really embrace what the president had said around radical transparency and to dispel the conflicts of interest. We have a rule at ACIP. We did when I was there. I can't speak to now. But if you had any sort of bias, you recused yourself from that discussion and that vote. And if you had significant biases or conflicts of interest, you weren't included on ACIP.
Were you ever present with any evidence of conflicts of interest that impaired the decision-making of any ACIP members, the former members?
I was not, but I would just note that I can't speak as much to the current ACIP members. One was an expert witness against Merck, but participated in discussion on Merck.
Thank you. And Dr. Monterez, if there was anything you want to contribute, I'm trying to understand if there are any reasons that we should think that these individuals should have been fired. You could say, no, I don't know.
I had...
they're talking about all of the people that were on the vaccine advisory board, right?
The
Kennedy fired all of them, I think,
ACIP
right?
members that were fired after the April meeting. I had not interacted with them. I had no, preconceived notions.
And Dr. Houry?
And I can't speak to them individually, but what I can tell you is when you look at the members, you look at geographic representation. I know that one was from the Midwest focused on immunocompromised patients because that was a need to fill. You look at it as a whole of expertise, and that's what ACIP was.
And I want to go back to something, the hepatitis B shot keeps coming up. And I want to know, Dr. Monterez, is there anything that you want to clarify or say more about this? I mean, it's my understanding that before 1991, when not all babies were vaccinated, about 20,000 babies were infected each year, and that after the CDC's recommendations in the 1990s, that dropped by 99%. This terribly contagious disease. And the reason why we test everybody is because certain moms might not have been tested and don't know that they have it. So is there anything else you want to add? Because I know this has come up numerous times.
I think those are consistent with the information that I have associated with hepatitis B and it's the promise of the vaccine. I do want to touch on one thing that was brought up in the context.
Fuck, I didn't even know that. Hep B is the one that they say you can only get through sex. So they're like, why are we giving babies day 1 Hep V? Are they being raped? I didn't know 20,000 babies a year had it prior to the vaccination for it. I didn't know that at all.
Of that discussion that CDC forces people to get vaccinated. CDC doesn't force anyone to get vaccinated. CDC provides recommendations supported by evidence to allow parents and physicians and others to make a choice, a decision in the best interest of themselves or the health of their families.
And one last thing I want to clarify as well. We talk a lot about ACIP members, but behind the scenes were these working groups, the American Medical Association, the American College of Physicians, the American Geriatrics Society, American Osteopathic Association, the National Medical Association, the National Foundation of Infectious Diseases. It goes on. These were the groups behind the scenes making these recommendations, and they were, to your testimony, Dr. Houry, pulled back and said, no, thank you, we don't need your help. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
Yes, they were pulled off the work groups, and I do think when we have experts, whether it's from societies or just with specific expertise, it's very much needed, and these organizations help with implementation, and we say talk to your doctor. So we need those doctor organizations participating.
As a grandmother and a mom, I just want to say thank you for the work that you do and have done, and these are unsung heroes, people behind the scenes, just like those thousands of CDC employees, those who are fired and those who remain and still need our support. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you both for being here to testify this afternoon. I think it was you, Dr. Menares, you made the comment in your testimony that this is about the future of the trust in public health. And I really feel that's where we are today. There's been a lot of, I don't want to call it he said, she said, back and forth, but there's been a lot that folks have tried to drill down on exactly your comments and exactly Secretary Kennedy's. And you also made the point that this is not about you. It's about trust in our public health institutions, because that's what I'm worried most about. I don't know you other than the few times that we've had an opportunity to visit. I've just met you, Dr. Houry. I'm sure you're both good women, working hard, doing good things for others. But really, this is about trust in our institutions, and this is where I feel we are really, really vulnerable right now.
Wait, is that true, ASOS? Did she say that?
We've all been back and forth with these votes, and so I don't want to try to ask many of the same questions that have been asked. But we have a structure within the CDC that is your career public health officials. They provide the institutional knowledge, the scientific expertise, and very often continuity between administrations. I think, Dr. Houry, you said you had worked across 6 different administrations? Or
or administration 6 directors.
So, I mean, you provide some level of continuity, that bridge between the political leadership that comes in and then the agency's scientific mission. And I hope, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you seek to ensure that the policy decisions are grounded in public health expertise while also meeting the goals of the administration. So, Dr. Menares, when you said yes to President Trump, when you said yes to Secretary Kennedy, you were also signing on to the goals of the administration here. I'm concerned that when career scientists then are excluded, maybe completely excluded from the director's office, what happens? Who does then provide the scientific expertise, this institutional memory that is needed to guide the agencies? I think we've heard from both of you that there was very little interaction between you, Dr. Menares, and the Secretary. And Dr. Houry, I think you have also testified that those who would ordinarily brief the Secretary have not been present, but also to the point.
Okay. I should have done this last night, but. I think there was a position that was created for her having to do with, it was like communicating to the public, communicating scientific information to the public, I think. She was the chief medical officer and deputy director for program and science at CDC. Her name is Houry. That's how you pronounce it, Deborah Houry. What do I want to break this up into? Public trust, I guess? Communication. What role should the CDC play in communicating with social media companies behind closed doors? I know this is a big one. I don't know if they actually do this, but that was a huge thing. Twitter files and all this bullshit. What role should the CDC play in communicating with the public? On the science. How does the CDC internally handle ethical or scientific objections when leadership directives conflict with established evidence? Why would that happen? Wait, when would that ever happen? That should never happen, right? How does the CDC weigh different evidence when there is conflicting research or emerging issues relating to public health? Mercury was removed from vaccines. Is it 2004 due to public health concerns, even though there were no researched negative side effects? Fuck. Somebody look that up for me, something like this. I said learning that Kennedy changed the CDC's COVID-19 vaccine guidance by social media posts. Bureaucratic. What an impossible to spell word. Any of these weird, like bureau. Hold on, I can do this. Wait. The bureau. No. The. No. 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 Beer. No, never mind. I can't. Fuck this word. What a horrible fucking word. You really can't tell what I'm even trying to spell? Fuck you. It's B-U-R? Oh my god. Bureaucratic. Learned about via social media. The logic behind the TB shot, given that it isn't communicable and like nobody dies of it. Why are some vaccines recommended when they seem to not be that important? Tetanus is another one, right? Tetanus, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis. The restrictions by the CDC prevent outside influences from affecting what should be objective healthcare policy. How does the CDC guard against external influence from pharmaceutical? Fuck this topic. Fuck this topic and fuck all the words associated with it. Pharmaceutical. Yeah, that's not. Fauci have done anything differently? What did Fauci actually say with regards to masks? How do you update the public in real time concerning emerging health emergencies when information could change rapidly as new information emerges? Why am I saying all the same words? Am I having a fucking stroke? Emergency. When recommendations could change rapidly. Okay. Name of outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think it is. Did he say anything more than that? Because people were saying he recommended people not buy masks or something, and that they only did that to save masks for professionals. I even said this, but I don't know if I trust anything if I haven't. Now I need to go back and look at everything firsthand because I might have just been mind fucked. Americans should wear face masks as a way to help stifle the spread of COVID-19. A departure from previous government guidance: only wear a mask if you're caring for someone else or hide it yourself. In March 8th, 2020, 60 Minutes interview, Fauci said there's no reason to be walking around with a mask. Yeah, the mask might block some droplets, but frustrations with communication. How do you... No, we just made our communication. Combative. Should the members of the CDC be more political, openly combative with politicians who depart from scientifically derived recommendations? I don't know, something like this. Little agencies, your responsibility make it harder to do your job. She doesn't work there anymore, so. Is it noticeably difficult to work at CDC depending on which administration is in power? Well, I can ask her this since people always have this question. And now we have a person who actually did this, so. Why do people step down instead of waiting to get fired? How do you decide when it's time to quit? And it's worth it to cede all of the potential influence you could have if you remained. Did Fauci give you any of his billions of dollars? This is a communication thing? Hold on. What time is the WIC event? Why do you think there's a WIC event today? Nunez, answer the question. Because if you think there's a WIC event today, because you saw it on Twitter, didn't you say it? Okay, it's on my Twitter. It's literally on my Twitter. About how science works. There's no time? Then get fucked. It's whenever I want it to be. Okay, that's good enough. Zoom. Why am I staring at this? What am I doing? Make a new meeting. How do I do that? What? What is this? I don't ever want notifications on my desktop ever. Okay. Where's create a call? Create a meeting. Do a thing. Phone? Team chat. No? Oh, home. New meeting. Start with video. Okay. Boom, boom. Nope. Yep. Boom, 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 boom. Stop. Boom, boom. This? No, this. Start. Test, test. Hello, hello. AI companion to assist with your meeting. What's he going to do? Analog 3, 4. Are you supposed to light up when you talk? Oh, no, that lights up. Okay, cool. Share. Jesus Christ. Wait, share. No, not this. Invite. Copy invite link. My God. There you go. Thank you, Trump, also for that tweet for today. It's going to help me a lot on that Wick panel. I tried the hair scrunchy thing. I don't like it. I should have hit it up with the towel, given it the comb, and then the old like this. Now my hair is stringy, and I don't want it to be stringy. I don't want my hair to be wavy. I want it to be curly. Tell us what you did. When I put the conditioner in, I scrunched it. Oh. Hello, hello.
There.
How's it going?
Well, okay. You?
Pretty good, pretty good. I'm lying. I'm not very good. I watched some of your testimony, and I over COVID, I did a lot of like vaccine and COVID related arguments. So now I just get insanely triggered anytime anything comes up related to it. So let me get your camera on screen here so that people can see you. And then almost. Okay. All right. How are you doing today?
It's been a morning.
It's been a morning.
It's been a morning.
For my audience that doesn't know who you are, so I believe your last name is pronounced Houry, correct? Deborah Houry? Yeah.
Yes.
You've been working in, or was working in some capacity with the CDC since, well, I was going to say 2014, but not, I suck at the government. things. What was the body that you worked for in 2014? Was that under the CDC or was that part of a different branch of like the HHS or whatever?
No, I was at CDC beginning 2014 at the Injury Center.
Okay. The Injury Center is under the CDC. Gotcha. And then you resigned along with a few other people when Trump basically fired, or it was, I guess, RFK fired the CDC director. And then we've watched some of your testimony on that. Part of your role at the CDC was doing kind of public communication with science, with medical information. And yeah, we had a mutual friend connect us, and I just want to like communicating scientific stuff and communicating where the research is at and communicating what the recommendations should be on public health is a huge area of interest for me. So I just wanted to chat and ask you some questions about that. Yeah.
Sounds good.
My first question on the broadest level, one of the big challenges over like the COVID time period especially was figuring out like what should the role of government be in communicating to anybody. What do you think the CDC's role should be insofar as like public communication, communicating with social media platforms, advising the president or whatever? Like what do you think what was the role? What is like the optimal role?
Yeah, and even taking a step back, I was an ER doc for like 10 plus years. And so for me, it's always been about like, how do you communicate to patients and make sure everybody gets what they need? And so CDC, I viewed patients as the population. And so CDC's role should be about communicating health issues or health threats to the population and what they need to protect themselves. I think when it comes to things like social media, it's, how do you have kind of bite-sized information that consumers can use, but realizing federal government can be clunky, right? So like CDC is not what you want like on, Twitter all the time, other than, some information. I think that's where you have to look at using, trusted messengers and getting out into communities more to have a lot more communication and looking for other ways to communicate. They do scientific publications, but not everybody's going to read one of those, very dense publications. So then finding ways to talk to the public, whether it's a press briefing or doing interviews like this where people can understand and ask questions, I think is really important.
I'm curious, you brought up the term trusted figures. What do you mean when you say that? Like members of the government that are public facing and recognizable, like people like Fauci? Or do you mean like having like podcasters or people that go around and do public messaging? Or yeah.
I would say all of the above, probably usually less political figures, but more like, if you're your church member, a school teacher, a podcaster, like who people listen to and have a relationship with or primary care doctor or pediatrician. Those are who people are going to be more likely to listen to when it comes to things. When it comes to health, usually their own doctor they will listen to. But a lot of times, like during COVID, we knew people wanted to know what their neighbors were doing, what their families were doing, what their, churches or synagogues were doing. And so really ensuring that it was happening much more through communities.
Is there a role now when it seems like there's so much kind of mistrust being fostered in a lot of these or in a lot of these alternative communities? Is there a role for the CDC to have an active line of communication to these people, or is there like a worry that it automatically becomes tainted if somebody sees that like the CDC is involved? Like, what do you think the combating that looks like going forward?
Yeah, I think, at CDC, people should be willing to talk to any partner. When I was at CDC, I used to tell my staff if a partner reached out, and initially they were like, "Oh, we don't have time, or we're not going to do it." I said, "Well, then I'll do it." And so then they're like, "Nope, we'll do it." I just think you should always at least hear what a partner has to say. You may not agree, but you might also learn something.
Okay. Do you think that we live in, as we go through time, there's always this like, now is the worst time ever, or this is the worst thing ever. Yeah. Do you think we live in an era of exceptional mistrust in kind of like government institutions, or do you think these things kind of like come and go? Or
from what I have seen, this seems like a really exceptional time in a bad way for mistrust. And I would say part of that's because, the person I used to, work 2 levels below, the secretary, was promoting misinformation and saying things like, don't trust the experts. So like, if you're saying that, then it's hard to listen to what the experts say.
Do you, I guess I'm trying to think of, one of the frustrations that I have is that when I'm communicating with people, generally if there's like mainstream information coming from like a scientific body or from a huge government organization, The boring answer is generally it's pretty verified because there's a lot of people that are looking at it. It's been through the rigmarole. There's just a lot of stuff backing it up. But one issue that I'm having now as I'm communicating with people is, so I've had this position a lot where I'm like, well, listen, if the CDC says this, if these people make this recommendation, it's probably true, right? You're probably safe to accept that. And increasingly, as of I think this morning now, the statement is like, vaccines haven't been proven to not cause autism, which I don't know if you ever make a negative, like, proving thing like that ever in any scientific literature. But now as I'm looking at the CDC and now when there are guidelines coming out that are hard to trust, I have to curtail that advice a lot. I've got to be very careful when I say, well, I don't know if I necessarily trust them. But obviously for the next administration, well, hopefully, I'm saying obviously, hopefully, if things go a little bit back to normal, I can get back to that. Well, we can kind of trust our institutions when they say these things. How do you navigate, or I guess how would you recommend somebody navigate, maybe you personally, or your recommendations to other people, like when trust is being lost in certain institutions, I guess, like, how do you navigate that environment in the future? I can be more specific if you need. It's kind of general, but yeah.
Yeah, I think what's tough is like when it takes like a minute to lose trust, but then it takes so much longer to rebuild trust. And so, even if there is a change, in a secretary or an administration, it's going to take much longer than just a change to rebuild trust. And this didn't happen overnight. I was actually speaking to a bunch of health journalists yesterday, and they said, so what can we trust on the CDC website? And one of my colleagues said, I wouldn't trust things on vaccines. And I jumped in and I said, honestly, I'm going to say that there's other things we shouldn't trust going forward. I said, if there's any updates on autism, and I gave a few other examples. I said I wouldn't necessarily trust those. Didn't know it was going to happen last night, but I didn't resign as kind of like a last minute idea I had been thinking about for months and really kind of pushing back against some of the misinformation and some of the things that I were worried were going to harm people, like wrong information on measles, allowing protected information on vaccine safety to people that weren't qualified to have it. And so when we reached that tipping point, I'd hoped the CDC director was going to be able to protect against some of that. When it was clear she couldn't, I knew that from a scientific integrity, like your integrity and your reputation is all you have. And so that's why I predicted that this would continue to worsen at CDC.
One of the things you mentioned, this is a frustrating thing for me, is the idea of you say you can lose trust in an instance.
Yes.
Why do you think, in your opinion, so I'll argue against people who will say, the most common one is like, well, Fauci said don't wear masks, and then he said wear masks or whatever. They'll look at like a hotly evolving situation where, information can change. Somebody might legitimately make a mistake or whatever. And it seems like you said, the trust is very easy to lose. But the people who are the most critical on the other side, who are giving reasons for why you shouldn't trust these, large institutions, the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, they'll make incorrect statements all the time, and they never seem to lose any trust on their side, which is very strange. How do you combat that asymmetry?
Yeah, I don't know if you can. I think it's just one of those things, just knowing that if you are in, a government or a leadership type position, that there is kind of that differential standard. And I think being more upfront, one of the things I learned, in communication training around risk communication, saying what you know, what you don't know. And certainly if you learn something differently, really be upfront about it. And I think it's more of, being a lot more humble, when we're talking to people. And that's when I put on my ER doc hat. I'm like, I need to refer you to a specialist, or here's what I know today. And if I get more data, or if that x-ray comes back different, I might change what I say.
Gotcha. There, on a personal level, there's a challenge between being, I would say, intellectually honest, but having strong rhetoric. So I'm pretty honest when I don't know a thing, but if I'm willing to hedge appropriately with, well, I think, or I feel I'm about 50% sure of this, but my adversary in a conversation is willing to stake out a much stronger claim rhetorically to the audience. Well, this guy seems like he knows what he's talking about. The other guy seems like he's clueless. It seems, it's frustrating with the combination of factors of any one mistake, or even not a mistake, but as information changes, any one thing that changes is like an instant huge red mark against a large institution. But then for other individuals, and there are still, a lot of them are still pushing ivermectin, still pushing hydroxychloroquine as these now they're cure-alls, I guess, for every disease. And it's so annoying that it feels like there's never a mark against their credibility or reputation when it comes to making these same recommendations, and they don't hedge anything at all. They'll go from one extreme statement to the next. I might just be venting. I don't know if there's a question there, but yeah, that asymmetry seems very frustrating, very difficult to deal with.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I guess on that level, one thing that I'm kind of noticing, and the winds are changing a little bit on this, I don't know if it's good or bad. I would say that spiritually, if you're a member of the government, a member of the executive branch, generally speaking, the job should be apolitical, right? The CDC, everybody, yeah. But when other people want to make everything very political on the right, I was trying to be apolitical, but I don't know. When the conservatives seem right now, they're very invested in being very political when they attack one side. And then when the institutions come out and they try to be very apolitical, I wonder sometimes if the impression that that's giving is one of an inability or an unwillingness to defend that side, as strongly as it should be. Does that make sense?
It does. What I'm wrestling with, though, is when I was speaking to several, congressional members a couple months ago around the time of my resignation, I said to one of them, I'm apolitical. And he just said, Deb, this isn't politics. This is ideology. And that was from a Republican senator. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, you're right. Like if we're talking about saving lives and health, it shouldn't be political. Certainly, there can be different spectrums of it. But I look at what happened last night, and the secretary literally is trolling Senator Cassidy right now. The secretary is. He put an asterisk on this updated website saying, I'm keeping this title here because I promised the senator that. But then he changed the rest of the website. And so that's infighting within, a single political party at this point.
Is it one? This is kind of personal, kind of with the CDC. One thing I've heard a lot in the past is for people that work at government agencies that they're surprisingly apolitical, like the day-to-day workforce. A lot of people from FBI, CIA, government people will email me and they'll tell me this. I've heard as of recently this year, I've had some of those same people and other people have said the jobs have gotten surprisingly more political. That like low-level employees, frontline people are now openly discussing politics more. It seems to be a little bit more pervasive in the workplace. Was that your impression, or do you think it's still relatively apolitical, or has it changed a little?
I think it's still relatively apolitical. I think certainly, the workplace, as you get to know people, people will just, tell you what they think about things, or if there was something on the news. But I reminded people during the first Trump administration, because I had many people just assume, that everybody, voted, Democrat. And I said, obviously that didn't happen here in Georgia, since, we have, a Republican president. And I said, so you shouldn't presume to know who all your colleagues are around you and their beliefs. I would say in general, when you're focusing on just on things like data, or clinical guidance, really shouldn't be political. And I think one of the things I was proudest of when I was the injury center director was I got firearm violence research funded under the Trump administration, by talking about suicide prevention, protecting young kids like from unintended consequences, things like that. So you can find that common ground becomes apolitical. So at CDC and other government agencies, if it's become political, it might just be because we had more political appointees than normal. When I left, I was the only career and there were 13 political appointees with me in the office as director compared to the normal 2 to 3.
Jeez. Okay. Kind of on that mention, how you can find common ground with people. I'm kind of curious from a personal or maybe from a scientific recommendation standpoint. Sometimes there are people who are just epistemically in a totally different world. But I remember one of the jokes I made about RFK Jr. was that there was a world where, despite how much just crazy stuff I would say this guy believes in, there's a world where, in a roundabout way, people end up becoming a lot healthier just because of some of the recommendations that he would make related to exercise is good. Everybody knows that exercise is good. Or this obsession with certain dyes or whatever, or ultra processed foods might just cut down on the amount of junk that people are eating, which is a good thing. How do you build a bridge, or do you build a bridge and agree with some parts of a person if their core kind of engine or driver is so fundamentally flawed? Is there a risk in that, or is that a deal with the devil, or how do you see that, I guess?
For me, when the secretary was coming on board, in my mind, he was coming. So you got to work with him. And I was actually the transition lead for the agency, meaning I was the one that oversaw how we would, bring in the new administration. So we look for exactly what you're saying, those priorities like around food and water and ending chronic disease, and where there could be alignment with him. I had actually read several of his books before he started to try to figure out where our priorities align. The one thing I would just say as a side note is I was disappointed that in his books, many of his references, like were retracted stories or Snopes, and so that gave me a little bit of pause, but I still was trying to figure out where we could have alignment. And if he could advance on a couple priorities together, that would have been great. He just chose never to meet with us.
Gotcha. Do you think that there is that Americans might be a little bit below the threshold of the understanding needed for how government functions to be able to have real conversations about the government? So, like, for instance, I saw one of the questions you got a lot was, why does the CDC force us to get vaccinated? And then sometimes when you're talking to Americans, it's like with the stuff relating to the Department of Education, it wouldn't surprise me if over half of America thought that the Department of Education mandates curriculum K through 12 in every state. It wouldn't surprise me if half of America thought that. Is that is that a thing that the CDC on its own can combat just when it comes to scientific stuff, or do you think this is a whole some kind of civic education overhaul, or what does that look like?
I do think it's broader. I think it's a civic education overhaul. And certainly, each agency can try to speak more about what they do and don't do. But when I use kind of jargony language and we'll say something like, well, CDC is not a regulatory agency, people say, well, what does that mean? And so and I was like, well, we're actually regulatory when it comes to looking at cruise ships and sanitation, but we're not for this. That just makes it really hard to understand. And it's also easy. I remember, when we passed one guideline around, prescribing opioids, I had colleagues saying, yeah, we knew it wasn't mandatory, but we would point to the CDC because, it's like when you're a parent, and you want to just say something, it's easier to say, well, the school made me do it, or something like that. And so sometimes I feel, other organizations might point to the CDC because it's just easier to kind of shift to somebody else. But I do think we can, as a nation, better understand, what is the role of government in these different agencies and what do they do and don't do? Because that way, if there is an issue, you can actually address where the issue is at.
Do you think that, I guess it wouldn't be happening now, but if you could make huge changes to how the CDC does communication, what would some of those changes look like?
Yeah, and I would say, what is sad to me is after COVID, there were so many lessons learned. There were certainly issues around lab, and being ready for responses. CDC rose to the occasion. We did a whole staff effort called Moving Forward to where we looked at lab quality and made sure that staff were ready for responses. And so with communication, we worked on that too. We started doing things called clinical pearls that we would send out to doctors so they could understand some of the takeaways. On the website, there were more data dashboards, so you could go and see what in your community was for measles. And then we started doing things like, more regular media briefings, putting out press summaries, and trying to use, as you and I were talking about, some of these trusted messengers to carry messages on things like flu campaigns. So I think we were starting to move forward on that. And I think that's where you need to work a lot with private sector and others too, because you don't want the same talking heads doing it all. You got to have creativity being brought in.
Gotcha. I guess I was maybe disappointed in myself. I didn't realize until pretty late on that the CDC website towards the end of 2023, and maybe this was updated earlier, was actually a fairly useful resource that when vaccine stuff was there, you guys were directly linking to studies and you could look up a question and look at stuff and it would be right there. And it was actually a pretty good resource for that. So if that was part of that drive, that was...
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. One of the things we did is we realized the website was so overwhelming with so much material that we reduced more than half of the material on it and tried to have some of those bullet points so people could find out what's on this website and here's where you go for more information. So that was part of those efforts as well. Unfortunately, in the past couple of months, the website has become much more ideological, which is not what should ever happen. It should be evergreen.
What was the, when the CDC is evaluating evidence for guidelines, what does it look like, I guess? Maybe in a boring, almost bureaucratic level, what does that look like? So research comes out, you guys are trying to decide whether or not you would incorporate, mRNA vaccine guidelines or whatever. And what are you looking at? Are you looking at other bodies and what they've determined, like the WHO or other people's, like CDC's? Is this strictly a U.S. process? What does that look like?
It can be many different things. So one, if you see that other organizations already have guidelines that, look really well researched, sometimes you can just point to those and not reinvent things and just say, we're going to adopt, XYZ guidelines. Other times, if there's a gap where people think it needs to be generated because of the time, the need, or something from the US, you look at what's the evidence to date. So you do like a systematic review, which means you do huge literature searches, of like how many studies are out there. Then you narrow them down. So, are they randomized controlled trials? Meaning, where you have an intervention, you're testing it against an experimental one and one that hasn't been exposed to that intervention, versus, anecdotes or case controls would be towards the bottom of it. And you put most emphasis on the more rigorous studies. And then you try to determine what are the findings from that and how would you then, change guidance or clinical care based on that. So it's not like a just, hey, we're going to change the guidance overnight. Usually there's a significant process to it. And that's what's been disappointing about some of the recent vaccine committee meetings. They've talked about, gosh, we're rookies, or we'll just add something to the agenda, when there should be this whole year-long process of reviewing the evidence when there's not an urgent critical reason to have an update.
For people that review evidence at the CDC, are these like full-time government employees, or do you have boards that are sat on by like research physicians, or where do those people come from, I guess?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. So there's, unfortunately, I believe they were part of the October 10th layoffs, but the library was one area to where they would do these long systematic reviews and help staff, pull the evidence around it. We also would have a lot of federal advisory committees, which means bringing external people in, and then the scientists at CDC would help provide a lot of that data and evidence for them. But CDC knew they don't have all the expertise, and oftentimes you need to bring in those outside researchers. But it was done in a very structured format, using what we call GRADE, which is, an acronym about how you really look at the data from the different levels of quality. So all of it was done to minimize bias, to minimize outside conflicts of interest. And that's the other thing. There's been a lot of talk about, CDC with conflicts of interest and getting money from pharma and things like that. So I looked at that about a year ago when we knew there was going to be a new administration coming in. Extremely few even patents at CDC, and most of the people that had patents weren't even currently at CDC. Conflicts of interest for things like the vaccine committee, really minimal because they go through a whole process. And then myself and other senior leaders have to disclose, what mutual funds like we even invest in, like publicly. So there are very few conflicts of interest and ties with pharmaceutical industry.
How do you respond to people who say things like they'll take this default adversarial position opposite all doctors, all pharmaceuticals, all hospitals? How do you respond? Somebody says, well, of course, big pharma or the hospitals are going to tell you that these drugs work or whatever. That's their job. They get paid for it. How do you respond to that kind of broad, mistrust?
Yeah, that's when I just try to ask some follow-up questions. I'll say, that's interesting. That hasn't been my experience. Can you give me a specific example? When you try to drill down a little bit, those generalities, oftentimes there's not much substance to it, other than they'll just keep saying, well, that's what I've heard, or that's what I know. And I'd say, happy to address it or look into it, but you got to give me something I can work with.
Gotcha. Okay. I agree with you there 100%. How do you deal with people who make, I'm asking you more like debate or just rhetoric things. I'm just kind of curious. I'm half just venting too. Sometimes you'll hear people say things. This came up in your congressional hearing, and you just mentioned it now, that you check for conflict of interest, where people will say, I call these things like level one assertions, where somebody will say things like, why don't you guys, when you study, you shouldn't let, conflict of interest shouldn't be a thing, because you guys might be biased, and Fauci's making billions of dollars because he owns all these interests. And people just don't know the extensive level of vetting that goes into a lot of government stuff. To step to the education world, I have a few friends that work with grant programs that work with colleges, and the amount of hoops that you have to jump through and everything else to get approved for government funding is just insane. But then if you go to the public, the feeling is just, NGOs get free money from the government with zero oversight. And it's there's so much oversight. It's unbelievable. And then, on the back of this, you'll hear these things, I call these truisms. People will say I can't believe kids get 70 or 80 vaccines. It's too many. And And I was like, well, what is the appropriate amount? Like if it was 500 and we reduce it to 100, would you say that's enough? Or if it was 70, should it be 30? Which ones do you want to get rid of?
And how do you break it down? Is it is it the same methodology or mechanism, now that it was then? And, vaccines right now have, when you look at them, they're done in a much more, I don't want to say cleaner way, but like there's a lot less antigens in them. And so you can actually have more vaccines and there's less of a response. So even though there might be more numbers, there is less reaction to them because the science has evolved. And so I think just being very clear on things like that too. It's really tough because some people will really be set in their ways and don't want to hear. And you have to be willing to change your mind. Like I have to be willing to change my mind too. I know we were looking at one of the vaccines and could we even reduce, the number of doses of it? I thought that was fair to look at, but you have to use data to drive that decision. You can't make the decision first and then try to backfit it because that doesn't help anybody. And I think that's the issue we're seeing right now is people have foregone conclusions and they're trying to force data or science. And that's never what it should be. Science is about learning and exploring.
When the CDC makes recommendations in regards to like the vaccine schedule, some people will point out that some of the vaccines are for diseases that like people are rarely coming into contact with anymore. So in the US, things like tuberculosis, or I've heard people criticize like, well, how many people get tetanus or how deadly is tetanus even, considering how rare and the medical treatments available today. Does the CDC ever reevaluate, or how does the CDC decide that like this is a vaccine that we would recommend on an ordinary child's vaccine schedule? Like what are they weighing there, I guess?
Yeah. So I think you look at, what are the treatments available for these diseases? Are they preventable? What are the long-term consequences? And what I would say is, I've seen kids that had measles, that had meningitis. I actually saw a case of tetanus in my residency training. And I can tell you it was a pretty horrible disease that the person had. I mean, they were on a ventilator spasming, with high fevers. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And it's preventable. And so in my mind, if somebody could die or they could have something that would prevent it, we should prevent it. Or at least ensure people are aware of the risks and the benefits of it. CDC does look, over time as to, well, here's an easy one, smallpox, right? It was eradicated, so you don't need to vaccinate for it anymore. So I think you can just look at what's the prevalence of diseases. And there's some vaccines, like yellow fever, we don't give in the US that you get when you're traveling abroad. So I think you just look at what's the, how likely is it that you're going to get in the US versus elsewhere.
Okay. When you mentioned lessons learned, or you mentioned that over COVID, there might be things that could have gone differently. I guess retrospectively, and maybe even prospectively, do you think at the time there were mistakes that were made, or maybe not mistakes, but this is a thing that definitely could have been handled better in terms of public communication, in terms of recommendations, and then I guess going forward, hopefully not under this administration, but in a more responsible one, how does it look different in another kind of epidemic environment where the government is trying to put out information quickly but effectively and might have to change guidelines as it goes without losing trust? What kind of, do you think any mistakes were made and what would you change going forward for those kinds of responses?
Yeah, and I think, to be fair on both sides, COVID was new, so I think if it was a pathogen where you knew what was going to happen, it's easier to have guidance and then adapt it. I think, with COVID, people were learning, are you infectious when you have symptoms versus when you don't? And so that was something, that was new. And I think it also changed when there were vaccines versus when there weren't vaccines for it, what your risk levels might be and how you treat yourself. But certainly I think being much more saying what we knew and what we didn't know and how it changed would have been more helpful. Like the whole thing around, social distancing, and inside versus outside, and really being able to talk more about what's the science behind it? What do we know? There's not a lot of studies on it. How are we going to determine that? And it could be that you say something like, because we don't know that much right now and there's no vaccine or treatment, here's what we think we should do to keep you safe. To me, that makes sense. And then when you learn more or there's a vaccine, you can say, hey, now that we know this, we can change this guidance. That makes more sense. So I think really being able to be more comfortable in the gray area versus having everything be so black and white sometimes.
Gotcha. Do you have, when you were working, I guess for this last year, did you ever feel, I guess, like more like personal pressure insofar as like death threats or public harassment from individuals related to medical stuff? I guess more so in the past, or maybe over COVID, maybe it was when it was at its worst. Or
Yeah, I'd say, I've probably over the past 10 years, it's kind of been up and down depending on what topics, I was working on. And even in the ER, I'd have, patient threats, or afterwards patients, might try to attack me. But this past year, there's been, I'd say, a lot more personalization, to where people focus on CDC scientists. And the one thing I would say is, CDC was violently attacked in August. A shooter came to CDC and shot over 500 rounds of bullets, each one meant for a person, took out 180 different windows. So I think that's where a lot of staff did feel very personally targeted and threatened.
Gotcha.
So not just by a name, but like because you're associated with CDC.
Yeah. I think that got all of like 3 days of coverage, and then we moved on to the next thing. But that was pretty crazy. I think that was a couple months ago, right? A few months ago.
August 8th.
August 8th. I don't remember. Did they find like his social media and everything for what was driving this guy?
And my understanding from some of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation reports was that the person believed that he had been injured by a COVID vaccine, and was angry at the CDC for that.
One of the things you bring up, the vaccine injury. So one of the things I used to always feel is that sometimes people will over-index on anecdotal information. Something that I feel that has kind of like happened over the past few years is something else is happening where even the anecdotal stuff is not changing people's minds. I had a debate with a couple guys who wanted to get into the vaccine injury stuff. And I think I remember asking them, I was like, do you even know anybody who was vaccine injured? And I think they had like one example, and it was like, we bought a car at a car dealership, and the car dealer guy was saying that his daughter was vaccine injured or something. I was like, okay. And then I was like, do you guys know anybody that died of COVID? And they're like, oh yeah, like 3 or 4 people. And I'm like, what is the difference? I don't understand. Like, it seems like if anything, it was like anecdotally moving you in a direction. It feels like the people actually dying of COVID would. And then also anecdotally, and I guess just like looking around, the media, like we were told for years that there were going to be mass deaths, mass blood clots, like everybody that was vaccinated was going to basically drop dead, or their bodies were going to explode, or something was going to happen, stringy things would be pulled out of them. And nothing came of that. I guess sometimes it feels like there's like an impenetrable wall. I know I have a lot of physician friends and stuff who will have family members that will tell them they don't know what they're talking about. And it's like, Mom, I went to medical school for this. I work in internal medicine. I'm a cardiologist. Like, what's going on? Yeah, man, it feels like it's very, very, very hard sometimes, even on a personal level, to break through to people, to get through a lot of the misinformation that's kind of floating out there on these alternative media platforms these days.
Yeah, it can be. And that's where I try to personalize it a little bit, not too much, because I like to, keep people around me safe. But I'll just say things like, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a scientist and a doctor. And I chose to get people that I care about vaccinated, just to try to let people know that, I'm human, I've got humans around me, and that, I personally get vaccinated. I make sure my family members do. And then I found that data is not enough, so like you have to talk about the data, but then also pair it with, gosh, this prevented, this many number of people from being hospitalized. Or I had a colleague who pre-vaccine now has long COVID because they were in the ER and exposed to so much. And now used to be a marathon runner, now can't even see patients on shift because they're so tired. Gosh, I wish we'd had a vaccine to have prevented that.
Do you, on another, I guess, like kind of personal level, one question my audience has had, and I've kind of had it, and I give an explanation, but I'm not sure if it's correct. Sometimes when big events happen, big firings happen, this happened in the Southern District of New York when it came to prosecutor stuff related to Eric Adams, instead of people kind of like staying and fighting within the admin, people decide to resign. Sometimes they'll write a public letter and make a statement. What goes into that decision of like, I'm going to resign and make a statement instead of staying to continue to give your input, or staying and fighting in the position? Yeah, how do you weigh that, or how do you make that decision personally?
Yeah, I said for me, it was an extremely tough decision. And I actually was given a list of, I saw the number in the programs that were going to be terminated end of March. And I saw that list, couldn't sleep, woke up the next morning, walked into the agency and told my political team I was leaving that day. I actually couldn't do that to the agency, wouldn't be part of it. I got to meet Doge that way. I got to join on Zoom and talk about why I thought some of these programs were important, was able to appeal. And so I did stay after that and thought, but what I found was I realized the second you say you're going to walk out the door, that it could actually happen. And they could have said, okay, go that way. So I wrote a resignation letter later that week, just because I wanted to, if I ever do leave or did leave, to have it be on my terms with what I wanted to say and to have thought through it, not be a rash decision. So I fought for 4+ months there. I was given things like a measles toolkit, asked to put medications on it that aren't approved for measles and don't have evidence for it, in my mind, could cause harm. We were asked to approve the COVID guidance the secretary tweeted out that we had never seen, that was like on a video. And we had to ask, show us like what the memo is. And the memo that they produced didn't match the video. And I'm like, I can't just provide guidance for the nation without like rationale and data. And there kept being decisions like that over time got tougher and more of them. And so, Dan Dimitri and I realized that we were fighting, for probably the last month. It was really tough. And that's when the CDC director was also told, she'd been there all of, I think, 2 weeks, that she wasn't going to be able to make any staffing or policy decisions without approval. And a leader can't do that. And so I knew that I didn't have a scientific leader at that point. And so we decided that the best way we could fight was from outside, because then we could use our voices more.
Okay. Oh, because while working in the administration, you're probably a lot more limited in terms of what you're allowed to say publicly. Gotcha.
Yeah, very limited.
One personal frustration I have is I feel like sometimes people don't realize, especially working in the media side of things and knowing other people that work on the media side of things, I feel like people don't realize sometimes how passionate but also underpaid a lot of government work is. I had a friend that worked at the Kennedy Space Center, I believe, and he was talking about a lot of the Doge cuts for the letters that went out to get people to retire. And the way that he explained it to me was that all of the old guys working there could have made way more money in the private sector, but they loved working for stuff related to NASA. It was just like a lifelong passion for them. And that overwhelmingly the people that took these buyouts were just young people, because they were like, oh, cool, I was here for a year. I'm getting a 8-month severance. I could take a vacation and then get a job afterwards. And that, they were just bleeding all the new talent out because of the people that were there and established, like, didn't really want to leave. And I guess like the framing that, like Fauci is now a billionaire and all the people at the CDC had huge shares in whatever bio lab company was in Ukraine that was manufacturing the COVID-19, whatever. It's very frustrating that the same people making those criticisms on the media side of things are at least like 7-figure jobs, 8 figures, depending on how big they are in media. And the fact that you guys have so many built-in things for like checking for conflict of interest and remaining transparent. And sometimes people will come up like, I wish you guys would just be more open about this. Like, we've been doing this for decades. Like, we already are open about this. Just the information out there is just so frustrating. It feels like when I have to start a conversation with somebody, I'm having to fight through so much bullshit just to get to a neutral platform where we can even start to have a conversation,
And, when I resigned, I'm still figuring out what I'm going to do next. I didn't have all those conflicts of interest that, people think we do. And so, it was a difficult decision, to decide to do that just from a, personal financial standpoint too. But you have to be able to sleep at night. And I also didn't want to hurt the American public.
For one of the things that a lot of people are thinking right now on the left, I guess, is if assuming the government comes back, or people that are just unhappy with how a lot of the executive administrations have been or how the administration has ruined a lot of these executive agencies, or that they're perceived to ruin. I don't know why I'm trying to say this apolitically. They've messed with a lot of these. Some people are thinking we need to have different laws, or we need to have different federal rules. We need to build in more guidelines to prevent this type of stuff going forward. And my perspective or position on it is more like, you can't really create like a perfect rule set if people have come in and decided that they just don't want to follow the rules. Because sometimes people are doing things that are already expressly against the rules. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, is there's already a lot of those processes in place. They're just not being followed. When you look at even things around the advisory committee, there's time for public comment. You're supposed to post things in advance. You're supposed to, minimize conflicts of interest. That hasn't happened like it did prior. Usually, you would ensure that there's continuity in an agency, that there's a, principal deputy or a chief medical officer that could step in as acting director. And we had a whole continuing operations plan, but the secretary chose not to implement that. I would have been the acting CDC director when Dr. Menares was off waiting to be confirmed, but he didn't appoint anybody during that time. He would step in and sign things. So there are processes in place. It's just you have to choose to follow them. So I don't think more rules are necessarily the answer.
Looking forward, if somebody wanted to make the argument that the things that are happening at the CDC or with a lot of executive agencies are really bad, but particularly with our medical stuff, with our recommendations for epidemiological things, what would be things looking forward that you could say, when we defund these things, when we are lax on these things, here are bad outcomes that we can expect going forward that you can kind of look towards and predict now, so that hopefully in 2 to 4 years you can say, look, there are more measles, there's more whatever else. This is why we need to have these things. What are like some indicators, I guess, that you could give somebody to kind of like harp on?
Yeah. The whole spectrum. What I'd say is like, one, I can look at like what's already lost. So like we lost the concussion program at CDC. That does all of the training for almost all of the coaches, for high schools. So going forward, many coaches will not be trained to look at concussion for kids and won't know how to recognize it. And, all of those athletes out there, that's going to result in, more traumatic brain injury, more, issues. Maternal mortality, that program isn't functioning right now at CDC. Smoking cessation has also been cut. And so people are going to start smoking again. We're going to see rates of cancer rise. All of that is cheaper to prevent. Maternal mortality is devastating in this country. And if we aren't working with hospitals tracking it and intervening it, more young moms and babies will die. As you mentioned with like measles and vaccines, we're already seeing that with, increased vaccine hesitation. Last year, we had to cancel a flu vaccination campaign during one of the worst flu seasons. So we're going to see more people die of flu, of measles. We had a polio case a few years ago. People aren't getting vaccinated. We're going to see that. There's been whooping cough cases in Louisiana where babies are dying, young kids are dying. We're going to see more and more of that. And then if you even look at things like lead, there was a lead outbreak in April in Milwaukee, and we didn't have the staff because they'd been fired at that time to respond to communities to provide that support. Fortunately, that was one of the programs that was reinstated. But you can't fire and reinstate programs when you need them. You need continuous support for public health.
I think one of the frustrating things is when something is active and working, it's not very visible, and sometimes it can be tempting to say, oh, well, we don't need this and this and this. We can just cut this. And it's like, well, why don't we need this? Well, because we don't have these problems. Like, why don't you think we have these problems? If there was what are like the biggest pieces of stuff that you wish that people would know, maybe epidemiologically about public health, or maybe about the CDC, that you wish like more like other people outside the CDC were harping on? Like you're listening to Joe Rogan, or you're listening to Theo Von or some podcast, you're like, I wish that they knew this, or I wish that they'd stop saying this because this is like so wrong. Like what are the like top like 3 pieces of things that you're like, God, I hate that people still believe this thing? Yeah,
I think one of the things is I would hear like they need to get back to their original mission of only infectious disease. Well, like public health and health doesn't work like that, and infectious disease is linked with chronic disease. During COVID, we saw the people that got sickest had other chronic diseases. During Zika, we needed environmental health to know, how to spray for mosquitoes. We needed reproductive health specialists to understand the birth defects that were happening, as well as sexually transmitted infection specialists, because it was then being, transmitted that way. You needed all of those disciplines together. And I would say, the other thing is Congress has appropriated those dollars. So it's not like the people just switched from one thing to another. Specialists were brought in for that. So it wasn't mission drift. I think the other thing is, people will say it doesn't work. You haven't ended chronic disease yet, so obviously you're ineffective. Well, when you look at the amount of funding that goes into prevention versus what goes into treatment and recovery, prevention is extremely minimal funding. And so if there was actually more focus on prevention and then ending chronic disease, we wouldn't need as much for treatment. And so I think it's just being able to really look at those returns on investment. And then
I will say real quick on that, something that's very frustrating because I don't even know this unless somebody brings up my attention. There has been a lot of progress on different diseases that a lot of people just aren't aware of. Even things that people complain a lot about. I know a lot about like type 1 and type 2 diabetics, like the advancements in insulin and these like continuous glucose monitors and the automatic pumps for type 1 diabetics. The advancement in HIV, retrovirals is insane. The all-cause mortalities for things like leukemias and I think all cancer might have just passed like 50% or something on the 5-year or whatever. I think we're on like the precipice of having drugs to treat things like Alzheimer's disease. But it feels like as soon as like a thing gets found, it's like forgotten and then they just move to the next complaint. Like these GLP-1 agonists are amazing. And to see that like the origination for them was like trying to isolate a hormone in like a barracuda fish or something. I was like a really random thing that you would never, or I would never think or whatever. And then to see all of that funding get cut. And it's like, you guys are all using these drugs now. And then you're trying to defund all of this stuff in the future. And it's so frustrating. I saw I don't know if you know who, have you heard the name Scott Adams or Adam Scott? He was the comic book author for Dilbert. He's a very MAGA guy on X.
Dilbert.
Yeah. But he's an insanely MAGA guy. And to see him tweet out and beg Trump and RFK to help hook him up with like an experimental research.
I saw that. I did see that. Yes.
And I'm like, and the same guy, obviously everybody's leaking his tweets about like, oh, wow, we just cut all of this experimental research funding. I'm sure this saved exactly 0 people. And it's like, my God, like where's the shame? The advancement is there. It's just hard to see sometimes. Do you think that how do you view the USAID cuts? Is this like a totally separate thing from the CDC's mission in your mind, or do you think that there's some interplay between, like international aid and disease monitoring and stuff and the CDC? Or
yeah, no, there's definitely. I'd say we used to collaborate closely with USAID. In country, CDC had people in over 60 countries. So oftentimes we would work with USAID. And USAID supported the President's Malaria Initiative, which prevents malaria from coming to the U.S., even though we've started to see increases in it. But as we lose that footprint globally, we're going to see cases of Ebola increase. If USAID and CDC aren't there to prevent them, we're going to see Mpox come to the U.S. more. That next pathogen, because there isn't that support in countries, is going to come to the U.S. and we won't be prepared. And it's also when you look at economic development overseas, that's going to have an impact on the U.S. if other countries are having significant outbreaks.
Do you think that when it comes to some of these international relationships, like with say the WHO, are these things that you think can come back in a single administration, or what is that? I guess I don't know if you have context there.
I think the relationships can come back. I think the structures and the agreements and building things will take longer. But I think finding ways to maintain those ties, with those organizations in the meantime will be important, where we can. I mean, the World Health Organization, we might withdraw funding, but certainly if there's another outbreak or something, we need to have a relationship to understand, what is the outbreak and what is the risk to the U.S.
Uh-huh. You mentioned that you were happy that you finally got the CDC to study gun violence. I think most people are unaware that, I don't know if there was a bill or something in Congress that in a roundabout way kind of like prohibits the CDC from studying.
Amendment. Well, it prohibited CDC from doing advocacy work in firearms, which CDC wasn't doing. And so, when we did receive the funding for research, it was very clear we had very, focused areas on what we were working on, like, veteran suicide deaths, safe storage, what does that show? Even things like on 4-H where kids, were doing sports shooting, like how do you make sure that they're safe? How do they learn how to handle guns, so that there aren't injuries? And so that's what we were working on. And you look at things like youth violence, and community violence. How can you look at community level approaches to it? Unfortunately, that funding and those staff are all gone now. But that is something when you look at leading causes of death, for younger people, that's a significant one for both homicide and suicide. Uh-huh. And so in my mind, if you can find ways to prevent those deaths, it's really important.
And then I guess one more question I have is, it kind of relates to the other one about the biggest pieces of misinformation you see out there. When you see people who are trying to be public health advocates, what are like the most important things that you think that they should focus on? And what are some forms of public health advocacy that you're like, well, I don't think this is effective, or this might be doing more harm than good, I guess, when you look at other people advocating outside of like the CDC or anything?
Good question. I'd say right now when it comes to public health advocacy, I think really focusing on things like, vaccines, and these preventable diseases. A lot of people keep talking about measles being, just a self-limited childhood disease, that people used to get and be fine with. Well, no. Some people then die years later from like what we call encephalitis, kids were hospitalized with pneumonia, and severe dehydration. So it's not a harmless disease. And so I think really doing more advocacy work around what are these diseases like and that they're preventable. And then calling out misinformation, I think, is really important. In my job when I was at CDC, I used to send corrections to our leadership team every time the secretary misspoke, because trying to support him to say the correct things. Obviously, he didn't read my emails or listen to my talking points, I guess. But I think it's important to correct that misinformation. I think the other thing that public health advocates really need to focus on is talking more with those in their communities about each community has different needs. It might be infectious disease. It might be food insecurity, and so how do you ensure that people understand where they can go for resources, what they can do. And simple things like blood pressure screening, that is so important if you want to prevent long-term chronic disease. So I think not forgetting some of the fundamentals of prevention, like blood pressure screening, cancer screening, and stopping smoking. Those are and exercise. Those are some of the fundamental things you can do to prevent cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm trying to think. Do you have any? Here's a random kind of question. How did you view like foreign stuff influence, I guess, in a negative manner when you guys were at the CDC? Was that a thing that you were ever made aware of, that other intelligence agencies might say there's a push from Russia, China, from some country about some disease or medical misinformation? Was that a thing you factored in, or are you just thinking like we just need to message as best as possible, whatever? Like how do you factor that into everything?
Yeah, in general, we just try to message as much as possible, and then we would work with the other countries just to learn, what are they seeing in that country. And if there was something around like bots or misreporting here, we just tried to do what we could with the limited funding, to promote accurate messaging.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I really appreciate the conversation. Do you have anything else you want to say, or any other points you want to bring up, or anything?
I really appreciate y'all having me here for this discussion. I was excited to join and talk with people around public health and how important it is. I think I have talked a bit about how it should be apolitical. There's certainly politics that always comes into things, but if you're just talking about health and what's needed, you need to focus on, how we can save lives together. And I am very concerned about the ideology that is driving non-scientific principles right now and is really dismantling public health in our country. And it's not something you can rebuild quickly. And I'm very concerned that when there is the next health threat, we will not be prepared. Uh-huh. We had started rebuilding post-COVID on lessons learned. There's been a huge backslide now in our country around public health. And when something happens, people, unfortunately, will suffer and die. And that's a direct consequence of dismantling public health.
Can I ask kind of a personal question on this? I'm curious. I'm 36, almost 37. And I have a feeling right now, but people always do this. It's worse than it's ever been. I have a feeling that things are more political today than they were when I was growing up. That when I say that, I mean like everything is political. The TV shows you watch, whether you go to the gym, the types of foods you like, everything is political. And then obviously this extends to healthcare as well. That it used to be in the domain of kind of the far left, not even far left, like the really hippie people were like, I don't trust vaccines. My dad is vaccine injured from the Air Force, and my parents never mistrusted vaccines, although today they don't anymore. They're ride or die MAGA people. Is it actually, in your experience, do you feel like every single thing has become more team sports today, or do you think that everything always has been and it just wasn't as visible before? Or
I feel like it's become more polarized. I think there was always politics, but I feel like now it's become much more extreme. And I've seen that just even with many of the congressional members I've worked with. on both sides. I felt people used to be a bit more moderate and centrist. And now I've seen just over time, people tend to drift more to the left and the right, which makes it harder to have some of those meeting in the middle conversations.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we really appreciate it. Maybe we'll talk at some point in the future. Hopefully things change course. I guess we'll see around midterms and next presidential cycle, but we really appreciate the conversation. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
My pleasure. Happy to come back anytime.
Yeah. Have a good one. Wow. When is our WIC debate today? It's at 6 o'clock. Did you see my email? Probably not. What was it about? Did you email my personal or the contact email? Contact? Oh, the note, not yet. Did the doctor lady who called it on Twitter agree to a debate? Oh, I don't know. I need to DM her. I don't know if I should though. I just need to see what I have upcoming. I would, but I want to go through that list of ivermectin studies and just do a whole debate on that. I think there's like 107 of them. Most of them I think are small. I just need the time to go through it. I just need to see what I have upcoming because I need to prepare for that Dinesh D'Souza debate. What is this? I have a thing at Yale, but that's just random students. I've got a podcast on the 26th. That's not a big deal. The next big thing is the Dinesh D'Souza thing on the 13th. Watched the entire briefing. It was insane. I saw this, bro. Jesus Christ. Or I saw the headlines. Is this real? Is it as bad as it says? Ex-GOP aide paid fetish artists to mutilate her, claimed it was anti-Trump attack. Jesus. Let me grab a Red Bull. Oh, Uni, if you're messaging me about making that script work, listen, I just wanted to do it last night because it's fun to learn shit. But I think Jader said that whatever they use on the site or whatever, that they wouldn't do it with JavaScript anyway or something. So I think they're making their own thing for it. But I love you and I appreciate you. I respect you. Wait, it wasn't makeup? No, apparently these were tattooed on, or it was like I don't know if she made scars or just tattooed stuff. I'm not sure. One second. They have it rate limited even if you run it locally? Okay. I mean, it shouldn't matter. The rate limit is 15 seconds, so who cares? So this morning, Trump was tweeting out, or truthing out, basically saying that congressmen needed to be tried for treason and then retweeting people saying they should be executed. because they were telling military people to not follow unlawful orders. It's a little bit unhinged, I would say. No, he directly called for death. Seditious behavior. Well, he just says it's punishable by death. He didn't actually. Rate limiting is good, actually. If someone pays, they should not get overwritten immediately. Rate limiting doesn't have anything to do with that. You can still have a time limit on your thing and not get... Stop. Rate limiting is not that. He retweeted another one saying they should hang. Wait, where? Aw, what a principled position. GOP Senator Rand Paul tells me of Trump threats against Dem lawmakers. I'm against hanging other senators. I know that's outlandish. You can ask me again next week, but I think hanging senators might be overkill. Jesus. Bro, I feel like I love this website. I feel like Truth Social is just the perfect encapsulation of what Donald Trump is. It's this website.
Featuring a striking 3D design that captures a historic moment. This high-quality graded card is both visually...
He couldn't even do his own fucking ad. It's an AI voice. And they don't... there must be a way where you take this AI voice and then you clean up this fuzz in the background. Like, what? You can't even do your own ads?
Featuring a striking 3D design that captures a historic moment. This high-quality graded card is both visually stunning and highly valuable. An essential addition to any serious collection. Stunning and highly valuable.
Gunfire erupted, wounding Trump in the ear and causing panic in the crowd. Amidst the chaos, he remained defiant, urging his supporters to stand strong. The aftermath of the attack sparked a wave of unity and resilience across the nation. Do you think this was even written by a human? Jesus, I don't know. Oh my God, it's not a hollow. What do you call the ones that have the... When you turn them, they change. Would you call it a hollow? Do you sell PSA rated cards first party? Is that a thing? No? Okay. Destiny, it's not that easy to fix. Most of the issue is just it's very low quality audio. There are much better AI voice generators, though.
Graded card is both visually stunning.
Oh, I just hear this like this fuzz. I would have figured it's easy to remove, but maybe not. Destiny, you realize Trump didn't get hit by a bullet, right? I think that's one conspiracy that I believe. I don't think he got hit by a bullet. I think that the Secret Service guy kicked him in the ear and his gun hit him. That's the one conspiracy that I believe. Why? Because I want to believe it. Fuck me. Somebody find the conspiracy video. There's a video of Did Trump ear get shot? Trump cupped his ear after the first shot rang out. Yeah, because the sound of it coming by is going to be weird or whatever. But wow, Pakistan, thanks for the tier 5 subber, buddy. It's not even a good conspiracy because nobody even has a video on YouTube that you can find easily. Apparently when he goes down, the one officer that's like running towards him basically like he basically kicks him in the ear. I don't know if you see it here. Oh, no, you don't. Some guy, it was a convincing enough X video. I'm 50% on that conspiracy. 50.1% on that conspiracy, okay? Oh, sorry, we were brain routed. My bad. He retruthed this. It's called a seditious conspiracy, and every one of them should be frog marched out of their homes at 3 a.m. with Fox News cameras filming the whole thing. Fox News. Why is there like 0 phone videos from that? I don't know. That is the weirdest thing. I don't know what the answer to that is. Make America strong again. Weight loss, GLP, starting as low as $139 a month. Wow. Through personalized care that puts America first. For a 6-month supply. Cool. From Liberty Slim. Wow. Top futurist says, sell NVIDIA. Wow. Crimson Collectibles. Same card. What's this?
Can't breathe? Try the Breath of Freedom nasal strips. Stop snoring and breathe better.
This is the realest
Available
person I've seen in my
now
life.
on Amazon.
Awesome. The Breath of Freedom. This is how George Washington breathed. Seditious behavior punishable by death. David. In theaters. Christmas, December 19th. Oh my God. The guy that killed the girl in the back of his trunk? Have you ever looked into the Las Vegas shooting and how it's nearly impossible for one guy to shot that many rounds with that accuracy from the hotel he's in? Was it that accurate? He just shot into a crowd of fucking people. How hard is it? This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors, lock them up. Bulletproof. Trump, make America great again. 40. Is he bulletproof? I mean, he got shot and bled. That doesn't make him bulletproof. No? Handcrafted in the USA. Get these people out of office. They aren't doing their jobs. They are looking for ways to be rebels and take others with them. They need to go. Bulletproof. Handcrafted in the USA. Insurrection. Treason. Oh my God. HELOC. Borrow cash without affecting your current mortgage. Sedition.
Do not buy the Grounding Co. bedsheet. They said it would help you sleep better, okay? But they did not warn me how fast this would work. I've been sleeping on these for only 1 week, and the difference is insane. I fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and my mornings calmer, lighter, like I finally got real rest. They said it was just another sheet, but this thing is woven from 95% organic cotton, softer and cooler than anything I've owned. Plus, it has 5% silver thread that connects your body to the earth while you sleep. That's what releases the built-up static and lets your body actually power down. I thought it would feel gimmicky, but it's hotel soft comfort with real grounding benefits. So you can all keep tossing and turning while I'm gonna keep sleeping grounded. Oh, and they're running a huge sale, 50% off plus a free mat with your first order. Over 40,000 people are already sleeping grounded.
40,000?
And it keeps selling out. Go grab yours now before they're gone again.
Okay. Indict all of them.
Featuring
Unlawful is the key word, folks. Unlawful. Hang them. George Washington would. Man, this futurist guy really wants us to sell NVDA. Traitors. David. Again. Those Democrat veterans took the same oath I did to defend this country from domestic enemies. It's a lifetime commitment. What should they do, and what should the American people do when the domestic enemy is them? Al-Qaeda is a foreign enemy who declared war on this nation on 09/11/2001. This is a bot. 09? 09? That's a bot. 1 trillion%. They've never sued for peace. So when Obama was giving aid to Al-Qaeda, sued for peace. So when Obama was giving aid to Al-Qaeda, Libyan rebels in Benghazi, and the veteran Democrat Congress members are part of that cover-up, it's no wonder they're now asking members of our military to commit treason on their behalf. Trump calendars? Would you like a Trump 2026 calendar? Click the button below to start your order. Whoa, look how strong he is. Incline too. God damn, look at him go. And he's flying giant eagles? The Dems are getting closer and closer to being on their way out.
Featuring a striking 3D design that captures a historic moment. This high-quality graded
Another
card is both visually stunning and highly valuable. An essential addition to any serious collection.
Oh, it's the same AI record. They couldn't even do a new AI recording for this one?
President Trump is eliminating bureaucracy.
Yes, King.
And making
Literally.
America healthy again. Reforming the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products is in Trump's wheelhouse.
Wow.
Let's end the roadblocks and authorize smoke-free products without delay.
What does that even mean?
Adult smokers deserve better options.
Smoke-free smoking? Oh, he got mad. Oh, somebody. And they can be brought to justice under the UCMJ. Get busted down or dishonorably discharged and lose their career and benefits. Step right into that shit. That's the ticket. Join ICE today. $50,000 signing bonus. Wow. America needs you. Oh, ICE.gov. It's the official website. You may be entitled to up to these benefits. $60,000 student loan repayment. Huh. That's a good deal considering most people that join probably never fucking went to college. We call that free money, baby, because nobody's going to be cashing that in. Hold on. What's here? No! What's Choice Coalition? Stop the CTP failures. I need to know what these are. The Center for Tobacco Products has publicly acknowledged cigarette smoking is the most harmful form of nicotine use. Wow. Domestic terrorist Democrats always causing chaos and destruction, destroying people's lives.
President Trump is eliminating...
Oh, we watched this one. It's called a seditious conspiracy, and every one of them should be frog-marched out of their homes at 3 a.m. with Fox News cameras filming the whole thing, ... Why aren't they under arrest for sedition, thrown out of their offices? Enough is enough. It's called seditious behavior at the highest level. Each one of these traitors to our country should be arrested and put on trial. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. We won't have a country anymore. An example must be set. President Donald J. Trump. Defend the homeland. Join ICE today. Go after congressmen as well. Why does ABC fake news keep Jimmy Kimmel, a man with no talent and very poor television ratings, by the way, on the air? Why do the TV syndicates put up with it? Also, totally biased coverage. Get the bum off the air. That's how I feel about Hassan Piker. True.
President Trump.
Ronaldo is a great guy. Loved meeting him at the White House. Really smart and cool. President Donald J. Trump. Holy shit. They're so good. Nice. Oh my god, look at him go. He's so mobile. Wow. Whoa! They broke the camera! Jeez. According to most, one of the best opening 10 months for a president in USA history. Thank you.
This coffee table has a secret. Wait
What?
for it.
Oh, it's got a drawer? What? What? Hold on, sorry. What? A coffee table with a drawer?
This coffee table has a secret. Wait for it.
That's crazy. And it goes right back under? Jesus. Wow, beautiful tweet.
This coffee table.
Oh, it's the top that
has a
moves. Wait, is it?
secret.
Hold on.
Wait for
Oh, it's the top that moves. Oh, I was getting perspective fucked. Oh my God, that's even cooler. Wait, oh my God. Did anybody see that tweet of the girl who is standing still in a marathon? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? When you see the first selfie, it looks like she's moving, and then she switches the camera, and then the other people are moving. And it was a mind fuck. You ever feel like you're falling over when you're in traffic and you're looking, not that anybody would ever look at their phone, when you're looking down at your steering wheel at nothing, and then all the cars start going and you're not going, you feel like you're going backwards? Whew. Communist mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. I mean, I feel like his first and last name are ethnic enough. Is this helping? Making him scarier, I guess? Oh, shoot, hold on. Truth Rising, the documentary.
It was horrific.
Okay.
What have I done to myself? I started to wonder, like, what's wrong with me this time?
Yeah?
You know, like, I look like a guy, everybody thinks I'm a guy, everybody accepts me,
Mm-hmm.
and yet I'm still not happy. There's no going back now, is there?
Transgender for everyone. This is what the Democrats wanted.
It's devastating for kids when we get these questions wrong, and yet every single conversation, the personal and the political, we're obsessively focused on what adults wanted, their feelings, their identity, their desires. Who was representing the kids?
Mhm.
It was always the kids who suffered when we got it wrong.
Yep.
This is going to cost us something
Jesus.
personally.
Not the Babylon
but
Bee,
this
too.
is bigger than us.
Oh my God.
Somebody has to be willing to take a stand.
They're brave enough to make trans jokes too?
We have to be able to debate what's true rather than having that dictated to us by the powers that be.
This case represented every American. It was free speech is for everyone. And if I lose my rights, if they can take away my rights, they can take them away from anybody.
Wait, we know this guy, right? I feel like I've seen this fucking retard talk before. Who is this guy? Or am I mixing him up with someone else? Is this guy on Steven Crowder's show? Oh, this is the bake cake guy. Is he on a podcast now or something? Or?
They can take them away from anybody and or everybody.
Wow.
But not only that, the fear, the sense of terror, the regrets, the guilt, the shame.
Oh my
And
God.
I was really, really afraid.
We all matter. Everyone made in the image of God.
Aw.
Everyone, everywhere, in everything. It can turn around.
Sorry, I linked this yesterday, but the timestamp was fucked up. Not just the basic copies, all of them from Victor David Hansen. You should review lawfare part of the conversation at 44 minutes. Okay. Truth Rising. My God. That's crazy, chat. I think Kwame is his actual middle name, Limfeo. No, it might be his middle name. I just mean that sometimes they stress the middle name to make them scarier. So it's never Barack Obama, it's Barack Hussein Obama. Because Hussein was the evil guy in the Middle East. But I'm saying, like, because Barack Obama might not sound threatening, but when you put the Hussein in there, now you know he's a bad guy. So it's like, but like Zohran Mamdani, those are already like scary words to Americans. So why the Kwame or whatever, does that make him more scary? I don't know. Dream Singles. Ooh, is she on there? Find international singles with conservative values on Dream Singles. That's awesome. Wait, the Patriot phone. Where are we at with this guy? It was going to be a whole new phone, and then I think they changed it into some reskin of something else. What are we at now? Hold on. No social media internet connectivity or Google Play services. Wait, what the fuck is it then? Is that a different phone? It's not the Trump phone? Oh, maybe this isn't the Trump phone. Fully compatible to work with all cell phone providers. exclusive talk and text app. Now with True Path navigation. Bam. Does she come with the outfit? Where are we at for Trump phone? Fuck, I need to watch this press conference. I'm sorry. Trump phone. Oh, wait, what? Wait, is it Trump Mobile? Meet the T1 phone. This is it. Meet the T1 and other phones. Premium performance. The T1 isn't just another smartphone. It's a bold step toward wireless independence. Designed with American values in mind, the T1 delivers top-tier performance, sleek design, and powerful features, all without the inflated price tag. Weren't they supposed to be out by now? Samsung 24 renewed. Samsung S23 renewed. What does that mean? It's just a refurb that... Can they even load their own like ROM onto it, or is it literally just a refurb? Can you put custom ROMs on phones? Like on Samsungs or whatever? Yes, you can. Oh, okay. Do you think they do? It's not saying anything. It's increasingly difficult because they're locking shit down. Wait, I'm not asking is it theoretically possible if you're a master hacker to load a custom ROM. I'm saying that, like, is it like an accessible feature that is ordinary that companies can do? Not that some fucking 2-inch dick loser who spends all his time on his Linux distro that he doesn't actually do anything on besides endlessly fucking customize over and over again so that he can go shit on Windows because they don't give a fuck about anything he does on his own system. I'm asking, like, is this an ordinary thing that people do? Yes, on Android. Okay, thank you.
I sent an email
Jesus Christ.
to Trump Mobile to figure out where my phone is and if they could refund the 4 other phones that they charged me for. And surprisingly, I got a pretty big response. We currently have the T1 devices in the certification and testing phase of development.
Okay.
No, you don't. They're even performing above and beyond expectations.
Oh, what?
To be clear, the product that she's talking about does not exist. It looks...
Wow, how does he know this? I bet this guy's all lib cucked out and super biased against Trump. Steam machine, liberal. Why use 2 phones? Because he cheats and he's polyamorous, liberal. Replacing Siri. Probably with a trans AI, liberal. He's liberal for sure. Okay.
Looks like you'll get it sometime in November, and they even canceled my extra orders. Apparently, I haven't gotten the refund yet. Now that we know that they're gonna run with the lie, I sent back this email basically asking like, yeah, which one of these T1s is the real T1? I'll let you guys know if I get more information on the non-existent Trump phone.
Look at the last line in the spec. It has a custom OS on it. Android 15 with One UI 7. Is that custom or is somebody else making this? $25-watt wire charging. Wait, how old is the S23? Damn, the fuck? S23 release. This is like 10 years old. No, not 10 years old. Sorry, 3 years old. Okay. That's the Samsung UI. Wait, oh, is it? The One UI 7 is the old Samsung UI. Oh, so then they're not using custom ROMs. It's literally just used phones. It's literally just refurbs. Okay. Premium performance, proudly American. All the S2 base models have 25 watt charging. It's the Plus I showed have higher watt charging. Okay. 256 gigabyte internal storage, expandable via card slot. How many modern flagship phones have SD card slots? Is that a thing? Or does that mean this is a very old fucking phone? A lot. Oh, okay, never mind. Maybe people still do. Oh, somebody said literally 0. China phones do. SD card stopped around 2020. Uh-oh, this only has 20 watt PD fast charging. Operating system, Android 15. What was that one song? We are Charlie Kirk. Fuck, I love it.